Ones that are out there spreading the rhetoric that police officers are the enemy, well, just know we've all got your number now. We're going to be keeping track of all of y'all, and we're going to make sure that we hold you accountable every time you stir the pot on our police officers.
Of day. Charlie 412 repeat. If they're set free, they can massacre someone else. Right now. The pigs are patrolling the streets. I need the black and brown people are a dying breed. I need the two natives identified. But without the badge, what can they achieve? Just make a reason that somebody calls it suspicious hits a lot there.
All right. Welcome to Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston, and on the Conscious Resistance Network. My name is Derrick Bros, and I'm here with my buddies. What's up, guys?
What's up, Derrick? Good to see you. Glad to be here. Glad to be on KPFT. And what other platforms are we on?
Okay, so right now we are live on Facebook at Freethinker Radio, Houston Freethinkers, the Derrick Bros page, and the Conscious Resistance. Unfortunately, we're not live right now on YouTube because we are kind of banned for a week. We're in YouTube jail. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But yeah, we are also live on Float. And Float, I think, is, if I would recommend any of the places you're listening to, I would say like hop over to float.app/conscious resistance, because it is a decentralized platform, social media platform. And I know the people who made it personally, and they're awesome people, and they're really trying to build a social media platform that doesn't censor and that doesn't track you or any of those kinds of things. So float.app. And then, of course, like Micah said, we're going to be live. This is being pre-recorded, and we'll air on Friday on 90.1 KPFT Houston, where we broadcast every single week. And right now, KPFT is always looking for help. And right now specifically is a good time to help. If you're interested and want to help keep programs like us on the air, because I was thinking about this, dude, like we're getting censored by YouTube, the internet, which is supposed to be totally free, right? But we're still able to broadcast in Houston on 90.1 KPFT and get the message out in the fourth largest city. And we're not being censored there. And so it's just an interesting dichotomy that like radio in this instance is more free right now.
We just have 5 words we can't say, and that's about it. We can play all the music we want.
I think it's 7.
7. Well, I don't.
Let's say them.
We can say them on the broadcast and let them out. How much would that cost?
But I mean, yeah, just think about that. We still have a home on KPFT where we're broadcasting every Friday. We get to do it live together on the internet, but then people driving around in Houston and the Houston area, Galveston, Huntsville, can hear it at 3 p.m. It's been so long, I forget. 3 p.m. on
and that's
Fridays.
actually a pretty big audience. We know a lot of people are still listening to FM radio. I've been listening more, actually, so that they can't go to the music stores as easily. At least we couldn't for some time. And so that was kind of nice. So, yeah, please make the pledge in different ways, however you can, to help KPFT, because just like Main Street's falling under, and we'll get into that in our economic points towards the close, KPFT is part of that, independent spirit that, isn't getting stimulus packages to survive COVID. So if you want to step up to that, make that pledge. What's going on, Johnny, man?
I'm doing pretty good.
the
Just
world is getting crazy.
enjoying the heat. Yeah, trying to stay sane. Looking at all the news.
We got a lot to cover. I want to mention
right wing, left wing.
I want to mention before we
stuff.
get in, guys, that we are on Spotify. Freethinker Radio is on Spotify,
That's pretty cool.
and we have. I just want to make sure that you guys know that, again, we're talking about censorship, but you can find us a million other places. So even if you're not watching this through YouTube for the next week or maybe eventually permanently, you can find us a bunch of other places and download, rip it, share it, whatever. Just get it out there. We appreciate it.
For sure. So, yeah, we got all kinds of stuff. Should we get into the local right now, Derrick? You got something you want to start with? If not, I think we should talk about the council members calling for overhaul of police oversight board and then reforms and such.
Before we get there, let me share what I went to today, because actually I heard about that at this press conference. I went to the press conference. The mayor, has a couple of these a week related to COVID, and so I got the update yesterday. I was like, all right, I guess we didn't mention this. I'm leaving Houston this week, so this is my last chance to question him in person. And specifically, I wanted to ask about a story we've been following the entire summer, which is what happened here in Texas with Collin County when the commissioner's court over there said that they were, concerned that new guidelines from the Texas Department of State Health Services and, which came from the CDC, were going to inflate the numbers and start lumping probable cases. And there's a really kind of formula for how to get a probable case. And it's a lot of different things, more than somebody who's just tested positive. It's all kinds of other possibilities, that those would be lumped in with confirmed cases, and then we would see an increase in cases. So since then, when we talked about this 2 weeks ago, Collin County has now added to their website a disclaimer that says we have no confidence in this data. They make it very clear. Like, we're basically putting this here as a service to our community. It's from the Texas Department of State Health Services, but we have no confidence in this data, and we're just putting it here just because I guess they have to. I don't know if they have to or they just felt the need to. But either way, so I had a chance to go to this press conference and ask the mayor about this, ask Mayor Sylvester Turner, and also ask the Houston Health Authority. His name is Dr. Persse, and Persse. And I was able to, let me find it real quick. I was able to go up there and just ask them these questions about it. And, one thing is, of course, when I showed up there, I was getting looked at like, I had something on my face, and they basically tried to stop me from asking any questions. They right when I was getting ready to go up and ask the question, the mayor's press secretary comes over and is like, oh, this is just for credentialed press. And I'm like, you know who I am. They've seen me around, and she's just going on and on.
KPFT, wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm with KPFT. Like, I'm here. We're going to ask questions. This is going to air on the radio like we're about to do right now. And she's like, you're not a real journalist.
So
and
the station doesn't limit us. The government does?
And YouTube.
Wow.
So far, we got YouTube and the government against us. But the thing is, so she's, and honestly, Micah, you remember this lady, even if not by name, by her action. Mary Benton, she was also the press secretary with Mayor Denise Parker, who said I was not a journalist back then, because we kind of did a flood campaign of trying to get the mayor to pay attention to some of the issues we were talking about. And she's like, never in all of my years have I seen somebody do this. You are clearly an activist and not a journalist. So it's the same lady, and today she was like, "Well,
you can't be both, I guess."
Yeah, that's
a human being.
So she's like, "You're not a journalist," and I just was like, "Yeah, I am." Blah blah. We did that whole round, and then basically she's like, "Fine, ask your question." I'm like, okay. So I got to ask my question, and the question was about COVID and about these case numbers. And so what I will say, I'm not going to play the clip from the mayor. I'm going to play the clip from the health authority. The mayor said that, well, yeah, it is true. For one, this is interesting. He acknowledged that, yes, there are numbers with the states. There's our problems with the state's numbers. He said he knew what I was talking about. He even admitted that other counties and even some hospitals have said they have no confidence in the data. And then I asked him, like, so is the city getting their numbers from these numbers that people have no confidence in? And he said, well, yes, but we're also looking for other ways to start calculating data or this and that. And, I asked, but just to make it clear, because I didn't want to say something if it's not true. He said, for sure, the Harris County and the city of Houston are, at least in some regard, sourcing their numbers from the Texas Department of State and Health Services, which numerous people now agree, including the mayor, people have no confidence in. Now, to me, I just feel like that's something Houstonians probably would want to know about, because they spent the whole time telling people to, for one, make sure you go get your tests. No, they had also admitted, and I thought this was interesting, that nobody's getting tested right now, apparently, that they're having a low number of tests happening. And they said that means the lines are really short, but it's not good for us. And so at the same time, people aren't getting tested. Numbers in Houston are dropping. They admitted that they had 8 deaths, I think, in the last week or so. But the numbers, if you trust the numbers at all, are going down. But at the same time, they're admitting that a lot of people in the state don't even have confidence with the people who are tracking the numbers. But that's not the story we're hearing. Like you would think after telling everybody, go get your test, that would be something they want to tell us. So what I'm going to play now is the health authority guy talking about the same thing, where I just basically ask him, like, what do you think about this Collin County Commissioner thing? And I also ask him specifically about the PCR test that many people have talked about. Is, they call it the standard for this sort of thing, but also people, including the inventor of it, Kary Mullis, who has passed away last year and won the Nobel Prize for creating the PCR test, said that he was skeptical of how accurate it could really be when it came to detecting a virus. So we're going to play that clip right now. This is the Houston Health Authority, Dr. Peirce.
I wouldn't say anything to, just too disparaging about the state. They're doing the best they can. It was a situation where they had a old computer system that was never designed to handle this volume. And so this was the consequence of it. So it's not that their data was inaccurate. They didn't give us any wrong information. It's just that there's that big backup of it. And so hopefully now that has been resolved and we'll get back on track and we'll move forward.
The Collin County Commissioner's Court, their presentation said that their concern was the new rules would lead to an increase in probable cases based on like a number of changes. This was in May, and that's one of the things they led to. I spoke to the epidemiologist over there in their health department, and she said their concern was, and I don't know the details of the rules, but there were some changes that could increase the case of probable, and so they were concerned that they were going to see a spike. Do you think that was part of the problem?
So this gets very confusing, and so I'm kind of hoping you'll go off the record with this, because what I'm about to tell you is my good faith, and I may not have it exactly right. My understanding is that previously the state had been reporting only confirmed cases through the PCR test methods, and that they now want, so those are confirmed. They also said that you can start reporting what they're calling probable cases, that are the antigen tests, right? So here in Houston, we haven't had a whole lot of that. We thought, and now we understand that there's a fair amount of antigen testing going on, but they're not reporting them to us or to the state. And so this is where the confusion starts to come in, and that has to get sorted out before I would, really.
So are the majority of tests, or maybe all of them in Houston, PCR tests?
Absolutely, the majority of them are. We're hearing that some places are doing the antigen test, but we're also hearing that they're not reporting it either to the state or to the local. So when we look at our data, there's very small, very tiny percentage, single-digit percentage of antigen tests are getting reported to us. My question, which I don't have the answer to, is, well, how many antigen tests are really being offered in the community? Because they're not reporting them to anyone. So how do I know? So So of the ones that we hear about, we've been reaching out to those places and asking them to report. And that only started a week or two ago. And so now we need to follow up. And this is what I don't have, and I probably should have at this point, but I don't, is that, okay, so what did we hear back? Are they reporting, or what have we gone and seen? Are they actually reporting them like they said they would, or are they still not reporting?
One more and I'll let you get.
Okay.
Any thoughts on, I've been reading a bit about the PCR test itself, and folks, even Kary Mullis, the inventor of it, his concerns about it, the accuracy of it. Like, I know it's seen as highly accurate, but also some folks say it could produce false positives or even false negatives.
So, all right, so that's a good question. So you have to understand how those PCR tests, the test result, the way they have been reporting to us from the state and elsewhere is either yes or no. But in reality, it comes in what are called cycle thresholds. And it's an inverse relationship. So the higher the number, the less virus there was in the initial sample. And so some labs will report out to 40 cycle thresholds. And if they get a positive at 40, which means there's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of virus in there, that gets reported to us as positive. And we don't know any different. Other labs have a cutoff at like 34, 35, and they'll report it to us as well. The question is that what value, at what number, what threshold is somebody still, because if I've got a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of, you test me, I got a tiny, tiny amount of virus, well, does that mean I'm contagious? I'm infectious to somebody else? Because here's the other question is,
prior coronavirus infection or something along those lines?
So that's good. So it shouldn't be a different coronavirus, but the question is when you are shedding that tiny amount of coronavirus, Are you just got infection, you're just starting, or are you on the downside and whatever, when you were infectious, you're no longer infectious anymore? And that's why, so part of the argument is that we should only be looking at cycle thresholds in the 30 or lower, or maybe 34 or lower range, because that's somebody who's got a fair amount of virus and they probably are infectious to the other person. So that's the new controversy that has come up. But from our standpoint, well, we just get positive or negative.
Oh, so that's what you're saying. You don't even know which.
We don't even know. We don't have no idea what threshold.
But in the city, like the tests, they're just like, for example, you guys are encouraging testing. Are those tests?
So the majority of those are no. So the majority of those are doing the PCR testing. But again, so that goes to a lab and they just report positive or negative.
So you basically have to go to like each independent lab that's doing the testing.
And then we have to go to each individual person
and see, how.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds problematic.
Yeah.
Well,
So what would be helpful, and if you want to, what would be helpful is if there was a national standard for the cycle threshold that would be considered, positive versus negative. Because if it's above
30 to 35, you're saying.
I'm going to leave it to the people who know that better than I. Sure. But what I'm hearing is it's in that between 30 and 35 range. I hear the number 34 a lot, 35, but I would leave that to them to decide. Yeah, but it would be nice if there's a national standard for that, right? And
thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to Freethinker Radio 90.1. Welcome back to Freethinker Radio 90.1 KPFT Houston and the Conscious Resistance. You were just listening to an interview with Dr. Peirce of the Houston Health Authority, and so I was asking him about the Collin County saying they have no confidence in the data, and a number of people having no confidence. And if you listened, you heard him say, that there were problems with the probable case count, and so being very open and honest about that. And saying that, he said he didn't put any blame on the state. He doesn't think it's anything nefarious. He just thinks that, there's some issues with it. But then also we started to get into the PCR test versus the antigen test. And he was basically saying that, admitting that there are variables and things that could make the PCR test not as accurate as they claim. And so somebody could be positive. He was describing it as like, there's a threshold of, say, 40, whatever it is they're measuring, versus like down to 20 or something like that, and that no matter what that spectrum is, it will still show as a positive. And he was saying you might be on the very low spectrum and not infectious and not,
be on the beginning or the end of the
beginning virus. Or the end, or potentially we could have somebody who is detect. He said it shouldn't, but I have read about it happening, detecting a previous infection, like detecting that there, because COVID-19, of course, is something that's novel, it's new, but coronaviruses have existed. If I know that's controversial to some people, but they've existed, and it's the potential that it could be detecting a previous infection. So he was very open and honest about it, and I find that interesting. I will be putting out a video version of that interview as well as the questions to the mayor. But so let's continue on with some more local news.
Awesome, for sure. There's all kinds of things going on, but something I think is kind of interesting and important, and this is following up on some calls we saw a couple of weeks back, maybe last week, by a longtime member of the Houston Police Review Board that was saying how it was really the oversight board wasn't serving the people. It turns out that 5 city council members today sent a letter to the mayor, and we can talk about how we have a strong mayor and city council has so little power, but they did send a letter to the mayor outlining police reform, said the Houston Police can immediately implement a complete overhaul of the Independent Oversight Board, which is something we've been talking about. And obviously they had calls from within the board saying it's just, building a narrative for police abuse. Turns out that they basically gave 25 reforms, and chief among them was sweeping reboot of the Oversight Board. Recommended the board have complete autonomy. I mean, that seems kind of reasonable to me. I don't know about you guys. And investigative authority, which we talked about with the subpoena powers, and full access to all unclassified information from HPD. Why not? We are convinced that there must be a complete overhaul of the Independent Police Oversight Board, the letter says. They obviously, along with that doctor that we were talking about, have no confidence in the board. In fact, he thinks it's doing more damage than good at this point. Mayor Turner, who has defended the police department and said the city needs more police officers, and he welcomed the council members' inputs and has forwarded their recommendations to a task force. There's different stories about this out there. We should
really be saying more cops, more oversight.
Well, he was
to these people.
He was at this. They asked him about this at the press conference. It was a COVID thing, but people brought up the letter from the council members because they sent a letter to him, and they also introduced this whole thing, like you're saying, Micah. And he basically was saying, we don't want to take away anything from the cops, but we also want to listen to people. But like you said, as far as the strong mayor thing, ultimately, and he didn't say this, but ultimately it comes down to him. We know that. Like, they could all pass this and support this, but if he stands against whatever it is that actually gets through this committee, the mayor could still say no.
Well, they did put forward some new other ideas, and I think whether they get passed or not, they're important for the dialogue of what's the proper role of police. They turn out to also suggest instituting a policy for procedures and guidelines for the release and access of dash cam and officer-worn camera footage. Imagine if such a thing were required and the Tuttle raid had to wear camera footage or wear body cams. They got thousands of them. We'll get more into them in the upcoming episodes. Chief among these are, independence, complete independence, ability to subpoena and get information, all public HPD records, and also the ability to get body cam and dash cam footage. In your town, do you think that's a good idea for people to have an independent review board with that power, or do you think the police should be able to hide everything? They are public servants, right? Houston Police Chief, and this is an older one, recruits officers from defunded police departments. We're hiring. I wanted to ask you guys just real quick, if you're getting let go from somewhere, do you think you're the best at your job? Just saying. That was just a quick one.
That's how I always measure my success.
Yeah, if I'm let go, well, that's personal success. But he's looking to hire the people that are being let go from other police departments. But this is things like
we'll take your rejects. We'll take whatever the dropouts.
So meanwhile, you got the mayor saying we need more police. You got the police chief saying we'll take the people that are let go.
And Jamaldi was very upset about this whole thing. This is what the mayor said today, because apparently one of the things was requiring a 4-year degree, and they're like, "Oh, yes. That's offensive to the police officers." Like, "Oh, maybe we should have
random psychology exams."
Yeah, there's things that they're really like. I think these are legitimate. If you're going to have people put in this position where they're going to be granted this ultimate authority, as we've seen, where they basically get away with murder, maybe you should try to have some people who are
maybe there should be some checks and balances.
Some good people. There should be some sort of
representation.
Not only that, but also some freaking standards for who can become a cop. Not just anybody should be able to become a cop. If they're even going to exist.
Yeah.
But all right, guys, let's continue on. I know we got a couple minutes for.
I actually wouldn't mind reading the 25. I can get lightning. HPD officers must not interfere or prohibit any individual from using their cell phone, and can only prevent the arrested party from using their cell phone once a determination of arrest is necessary. Think about it. You're about to be put away. HPD officers who are not undercover must clearly state their full last name and specific police station they work for. Present an ordinance for a vote to City Council related to cite and release for minor nonviolent offenses. Offer incentive pay for a designated number of officers to live in a precinct. Conduct targeted recruitment efforts. Preferential hiring considerations for applicants who reside within city. And the targeted recruitment were at historically black universities and minority serving institutions. Eliminate the 48-hour rule as detailed in the meet and confer agreement. Eliminate the 180-day rule. And it goes on into a lot more. But I think that can reach, wherever you are. You might want to consider your police in that.
We'll share that out there because, like you said, Micah, it goes into psychological agreement. Yeah. There's all kinds. I think there's a lot of radical ideas, and some of them probably should happen. But ultimately, it does come down to the fact that, once again, the mayor has a very strong position, and what they gave him almost $1 billion just recently. So I'm not really seeing, unfortunately, much optimism. But like you said, Micah, these things are being introduced. That's a positive thing.
Yeah. This is the house I've heard it spoken about. We've been talking about police violence for a decade or more.
We have been talking about this
in that way. Is a positive that people are, starting to be concerned about it more and actually taking, maybe to the streets for protest and for info jamming and to change the world they live in. So,
Johnny, you want to hit that human trafficking thing? The story.
Well, it's not really about human trafficking.
Well,
it's about these guys bang up investigating. So there's a bridge in Houston.
It is.
There's a bridge in Houston that's pretty famous for saying "be someone," and every once in a while, when there's something trending, it gets changed. It was changed to George Floyd when the Super Bowl came. Some really awesome artist just scribbled football on it. But now it says "Save Our Children," which I think that's
a horrible message.
Yeah, it sounds pretty simple, but they're saying that Union Pacific plans to investigate the QAnon-linked vandalism to Be Someone Bridge. Now, they already say that it's linked to them, but later in the article, they kind of go against
Why
that.
did QAnon once post hashtag Save Our Children? I mean, come on.
Yeah,
That's basically what it is people have used it.
It's just a guess, really. It says Union Pacific officials plan to lodge an investigation following the latest round of vandalism on the rail overpass. At some point before 1 a.m., Save Our Children was painted on the side of the bridge. And it says now, the slogan has recently been associated with the convoluted ultra-right-wing conspiracy theory. Ultra-right-wing conspiracy theory known as QAnon, which alleges that a high-ranking government official known as QAnon shares information about anti-Trump deep state, often tied to Satanism and sex trafficking. And we should just mention it's not only QAnon that has questions about those issues.
Yeah, the QAnon people have hijacked a lot of real issues.
In case it wasn't completely obvious. So, but Trump loves to give little hints towards it. So it says last week, Vice President Mike Pence dismissed QAnon as a conspiracy theory, while President Donald Trump expressed support to those who give the theory credence. The call to action is alternatively known as Save the Children, which shares no relation to a nonprofit of the same name. So it says NBC News reports Friday that more than 200 Save the Children events were recently scheduled on Facebook. And here it comes. Union Pacific spokeswoman Ms. Espinoza on Sunday. The incident would also be investigated internally and that they might notify Houston police of vandalism. Okay, sorry, hang on. I was trying to skip ahead. So here it is. No group has publicly claimed responsibility for the bridge vandalism prior to the latest message. The bridge was painted by a tribute of longtime Houstonian George Floyd. So basically they have...
Somebody's mad that they painted over a message they like.
Yeah, they really just don't know what happened and are saying QAnon. But I don't know. I think it's kind of crazy because I wanted to just talk about that briefly just because I was sharing just a quick meme on Exposed Bill Gates Day about Bill Gates. Like, it was just one picture and it was kind of like questioning his funding for vaccines and stuff like that. And everyone was checking in on me like, are you okay, man? Did you go far right? Are you all right now? And I was kind of confused, because I don't really pay much attention to 4chan or any of that QAnon stuff. So yeah. I literally just don't like Bill Gates. And I have a lot of questions about,
if you ask about Bill Gates, all of a sudden you're a wacko.
Yeah, so I was then getting all these questions. People were asking me if I've gone totally right, and I'm like, okay, well, you guys, if some crazy person agrees on something that makes sense, it doesn't mean that thing that makes sense makes any less sense. Like, they just
a broken clock is right twice a day. Are you broken?
Yeah, and
are you right twice a day?
It's it's a real phenomenon what you're talking about, Johnny. That like a lot. Especially the Bill Gates thing. We helped push the Exposed Bill Gates thing, and it blew up on Twitter and elsewhere. And when it did get written about by the media, the QAnon,
it's like,
people spreading Bill Gates and this and that.
And can we just be happy that people on the right who usually disagree with everything we have to say now are willing to investigate?
Should they not care about children because they're, let's just say, radical?
It really seems 1984-ish to me because it's like, the wrong person is talking about this. So Save Our Children, that hashtag, you don't want to like that. That's not a good thing. You don't support that. I'm showing on the screen right now. I want to mention just now that we have a march here in Houston to end human trafficking. So we're pre-recording this on a Monday. It'll air Friday on KPFT. That means you still have time to attend this march. It's Saturday afternoon from 1 to 5 p.m. at Discovery Green. And I know the people involved. They're really awesome people. This is a totally peaceful protest against human trafficking for people of all ages, both like in support of people of all ages, and all ages are welcome. Let's show our officials that we've had enough and something must be done to end human trafficking, they say. Let's unite and speak for the voiceless, unite families again, and show our strength in numbers. The children are the future of this nation. It's time to make the world a better place for them. It says, they are asking people to wear masks. And they're using the hashtag Protect Our Children, Save Our Children, End Human Trafficking.
And if you go there, it doesn't make you right wing.
Yeah, you're not a QAnon person. There's nothing on this that says anything about QAnon or anything like.
Nothing about Donald Trump giving a hint. Like, even if Donald Trump agrees that we should catch pedophiles, despite the fact he's on Epstein's flight lists.
Yeah.
I mean,
Doesn't make it
all the better.
It's an ad hominem argument.
And we covered
Let's
this.
catch 'em.
We covered this last week when you were gone, Johnny. That even now the Columbia Journalism Review is calling out Bill Gates for his role in media and like specifically fact checking. And
I read that.
They're the first ones to really call it out. We're gonna go to a music break real quick. But again, if you're in Houston and you want to hashtag Save Our Children or you care about that issue, Discovery Green 1 to 5 p.m. on Saturday. We're gonna go to a song from Jay Soley. We'll be right back.
Wake up.
Put your hands up if you happen to follow and want a song talking about popping the bottles. Watch us in models, I'm not gonna bother. Got us a problem, can't stop it tomorrow. Karen, put your hands up if you happen to follow and want a song talking about popping the bottles. Watch us in models, I'm not gonna bother. Got us a problem, can't stop it tomorrow. Hello, my name is The Truth. Solely throwing a grenade in the booth. See me delete these beats out. I'm a white rapper like I TP'd your house. Put your hands up if you happen to follow and want a song talking about popping the bottles. Watches and models, I'm not gonna bother. Got us a problem, can't stop it tomorrow. Change to market Obama. Change you can believe will offer you nada. The same global elite are dropping in dollars. Republic of a puppet, the heart of the monster. Uganda and Gaza are products of anonymous economists and politicians calling the shots. Would you last if it happened tomorrow? Running down your block from an all-black chopper. Zoom like you hopped in a Mazda. Top chopped off, spotlight shined on you. Drive faster, they're starting to catch up. Get a megaphone, start yelling your ass off. This ain't Germany, if you came to murder me, I'm going to the top, so you better aim vertically. Okay, certainly, this ain't brain surgery. Just change the teleprompter like I'm Ron Burgundy. Put your hands up if you happen to follow and want a song talking about popping the bottles. Watch us in models, I'm not gonna bother. Got us a problem, can't stop it tomorrow. Eric, put your hands up if you happen to follow and want a song talking about popping the bottles. Watch us in models, I'm not gonna bother. Got us a problem, can't stop it tomorrow.
That's what I call fear-mongering.
Pessimism, repetition,
Communism, terrorism.
pessimism, repetition, communism, terrorism,
Pessimism, repetition.
communism, terrorism, pessimism, repetition, pessimism, repetition.
Communism, terrorism. Pessimism, repetition. Communism, terrorism.
Historical reminiscence, cause this is repetitious. It's the new world order in the 60th edition. The mission isn't different if it's Hitler to the Clintons or the politicians sitting in trilateral commissions. The president's position has never been our decision. It's been given with permission in a one-party system. You think there's competition in between the opposition, but from Bush to Obama there really isn't a difference. They wish to kill victims of the police state system, so I spit out bars to free us from the prison. I can sound pop to bait you in, then spit real talk like a bait and switch. Take those kids who never gave two shits and make them give one just based on this. Listen, new Rockefeller, old ambitions. They're all terrorists by their own definitions. Give a little kid a missile in the Middle East, tell them it's a competition to see who can live the least. They own television, that's why they don't mention the fact that Tower 7 was controlled demolition. Those in suspicion must be code for magicians, cause those sons of bitches were at home in their kitchens. Funding the mission of the opposition, giving them guns and getting shot by our own ammunition. Turn off your television because they won't mention the fact that Tower 7 was controlled demolition. You can call me crazy, but go look it up. On 9/11, Tower 7 fell without getting touch. Jay Soley.
9/11 was done by people, our own government, our own banking system, to perpetuate the fear of the American people into subordinating themselves to anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, and to create this war, this endless war on terror.
All right. Welcome back to Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. And of course, we're live online at the Conscious Resistance. I want to mention just anybody who is hearing this, whether you're listening on KPFT, if you're looking for a new social network, I recommend checking out our friends at Float. It's Float as in flote.app/conscious resistance is where you can find us. And right now, if you are watching, go to float.app/conscious resistance/live, and you can see us on a non-Facebook, non-YouTube, non-censored platform. So that's pretty cool. Again, float.app. Just recommend checking that out if you're looking for alternative social media platforms. Because as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're missing out on a lot of friends right now, because usually we stream every week to our friends on YouTube that follow the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel. and we are in jail for a week and can't stream, post, or even tell anybody that we're live right now. So we
The
appreciate
audience
everybody.
is small and you wonder where they all are. That's what's happened.
And this is what we've been saying for a while. This is going to happen.
Speaking of that, and the mesh of the social media and the FM audience, we have been trying, and we do often post and put the comments up there that are the most thought-provoking or interesting to us. And we want to remind you that we're giving voice to these texted comments, and it's being those comments, those thoughts are being broadcast across FM radio, KPFT. We're supported by listeners like the people who make these posts and others. So your thoughts can get out there, get involved with us on social media. That is a great way to engage the dialogue. Thank you, everyone who has for years, and all newcomers.
Yeah,
So,
you speak to us through the internet and you speak through the radio.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Speak to it. Yeah, comment and it gets out on the radio. So.
All right, Mike, I know you got this Texas story before we move on to the bigger things.
I just thought it was kind of cool because, when this person opened up their salon despite the lockdown, this was during the height of the lockdown, this business owner dared to open their salon and not require people to wear a mask.
Did she get called a Karen?
Oh, she got called all kinds of things. But it turns out that they're, I'm not sure what their strengths are going to be in running, but they're running for a state Senate seat. And they're up there in Dallas. Their name is Shelley Luther. They're the owner of the Salon a la Mode in Dallas. So she said that the Republican governor, Greg Abbott's statewide mask mandate, called it ridiculous. We see that the Biden and them are going to have a maybe federal mandate on it. So, if this is something you're not about, you might want to check this person out. I'm not trying to endorse her. I don't know much about her. I just know about this news article, and I'm curious about her. And I do remember her opening the salon, and she seemed to think it was people's rights if they wanted to go in somewhere without a mask, and a mask wasn't required by the person who owned the property. It should be fine. If you notice, we're right here. None of us have a mask on.
Yeah, and like you said, Mike, it's not an endorsement at all. If anything, it's just sort of maybe an interesting story on how somebody makes a choice, a bold choice during a pandemic, and then is attacked for it and decides, you know what, I'm going to go try to make a difference. I don't necessarily think that
I think a lot of people
politics is the way, but yeah,
way.
that inspired her to be like, I'm going to try to do something about this because I got attacked over this issue.
But so it's just nice also that other people out there kind of question the whole thing, if nothing else, and take a stand. And then sometimes their stand leads to other things. We've seen this both through HFT, where activists went on to other things and did, what motivated them. So this is great in a way, just more people involved in the dialogue.
Johnny, what's going on in food?
Yeah, what is food?
What's happening with
What
the
is
food?
food?
I hear you got a
I think
crazy
this is
story.
like a month or two old, but I came across it and I was like, yeah, I'm going to share it. So the nuggets of the future.
Oh, it sounds delightful already.
KFC is working with a Russian bioprinting company to 3D print chicken meat using animal cells.
Chickens.
Using animal cells cultivated in a lab. That's kind of a mouthful, but it takes that to explain it.
3D printed
or the lab.
Yeah.
chicken meat using animal cells cultivated in labs. So it's
Russians. Just kidding. No, so yeah, KFC is 3D printing chicken meat using animal flesh cells at Russian research labs to provide customers with more ethically sourced meat.
Are we really running out of food that bad?
The fast food giant is working with Moscow-based company 3D Bioprinting Solutions, which I feel like I've heard that company name before.
3D bioprinting.
I feel like I've heard that somewhere else.
Guess I could
Doesn't sound right.
As part of its meat of the future concept. So the finger-licking bioprinting tech method uses chicken cells and plant material to reproduce the taste and texture of chicken meat, although it still uses chicken flesh. So sorry for all you vegans out there. And it's got a really cool graph. I don't know if you have the article pulled up. You can see this really fancy graph. It says that cell samples are taken from the chickens, then they're multiplied in a lab to create a paste, and then the paste is bioprinted into meat cubes. The meat is seasoned and delivered to KFC branches, and boom, now you have delicious chicken.
So they can sort of technically still say, well, it is chicken because it came from the cells of chicken.
For sure.
I'm not really sure,
crazy.
man. Like I think it just kind of creeps me out.
It once
like,
was chicken.
And there is a huge debate to be said, because like you could look at it one way and saying like, obviously natural things are more akin to our bodies and we don't know the consequences of 3D printed meat paste chicken. You know,
I love 3D printers, but I'm definitely not interested in 3D printed meat.
Yeah, but you can do it if you want. I'm not going to get in the way of you 3D.
No, I don't
no,
think
but
so.
don't try to feed it to me and call
So
it
I was
shit.
saying it's a conundrum because they're saying it's going to save like 1 million or 1 billion chickens
Pretty soon.
So-
you'll be
Oh
going
yeah,
crazy
right
if you
here.
don't call it
KFC, which
chicken.
is responsible for the slaughter of around 1 billion chickens each year, according to the PETA-backed campaign. So that's what I'm saying. So even though some of the people believe in nature, they still might argue that this is a better thing because they're going to be saving chicken lives.
It didn't even get to be alive.
And so it's going to be an interesting debate. I guarantee in the next 10 years, this is going to be more and more fast food companies are going to be doing this.
It's already
if they haven't
happening.
already.
It's already happening. Beyond the biggest stocks of the last year have been that Impossible Burger and Beyond Burger. Those were the biggest stocks that went public in the last year. I'm also showing on screen for those who are watching. There's this article from the World Economic Forum, which is the people pushing the Great Reset and people involved in Event 201. This is from earlier this year. Could labriculture be the future of food? One of the big things that they're talking about this future, this Great Reset, is in the name of the environment, in the name of, like you said, reducing violence, which again, I'm a vegan. I'm totally for not killing animals, but and I also am for voluntary
That's what I'm
choice.
saying. It's
But I'm
such a
also
weird
skeptical
debate right
of this
here.
push. Like it's more ways to me that we're pushing into the technocratic, but also just the kind of, and again, if it stays voluntary, fine, do it. Eat that lab meat if you want, the Soylent Green if you want, but my concern is that as it becomes more mandated, because it's coming from these top-down organizations, just not somebody writing an article saying, hey, that'd be cool. We have companies, like you said, now KFC, big brands investing in it. We have big organizations like the World Economic Forum.
Everyone just takes something real, replace it with something that's a little fake.
Yeah.
Take something real, and then they just replace it with something that's just a little tweaked. It's pretty, and they say it's pretty much the same thing, but it's cheaper.
I see. Who wants to eat a printed
I just see that slowly happening. So, it's just another example that if you go to the bottom of the page, you can see their media's
But other people are like you.
It's around the KFC. These people are lining up to try this meatless chicken.
Look at that green.
Even though it's not meatless, because it's just
they had to follow the meatless Whopper.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is there's more and more brands that are going that
definition of
direction.
meat? Does something have to be born to be meat? Otherwise, it's like what?
Simulacrum.
We're about to create a new category of food.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
It's going to be vegetables.
It's a
meat,
debatable.
It's kind of like when we
topic now. I guess it's gone from this is what we know it is. Which, I mean, meat can come from an animal and a human animal included. It can come from any
cannibalism.
Like but
this is some kind of hybrid.
And look, I occasionally eat some of these, alternative meats, but I don't eat the processed GMO stuff. I eat things that are made from potatoes and walnuts and quinoa, put into like a meat.
Hunter-gatherers and started having farmers, like a complete change. Think of generations of people that eat this. And I don't know.
Well, all right. I want to mention one other story just briefly, and it's briefly, but not to say that it's not an important story. Of course, there's so many things that we can hardly get to all of them each week. Micah was mentioning this. Whenever things were normal before this new normal, we had a Freethinker Radio episode 2 times a week. We had this 1 hour on Fridays with Johnny, and then Micah and I would do 2 hours on Monday. So we went from 3 hours to 1 hour, and it's a big change to not be able to cover all of the information that is going on. And as you guys know, there's so many important things. There's so much we're not going to get into today, but we do hope that you will check out our Spotify, our Stitcher, our podcast page, thehoustonfreethinkers.com, so you can find our other episodes if you want more, you want to find out what we've been talking about. But this past weekend there was a 57th anniversary march on DC, the anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. I was actually at the 50th anniversary 7 years ago in DC, and it follows renewed protests in DC. There's been ongoing protests, just like in Wisconsin, just like in Portland. Ongoing protests, Black Lives Matter protests, police brutality protests, some rioting, some fighting in the streets. And this is all coming after, and we talked about this last week, Micah, of course, the death of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin is just kind of the latest, him being shot in the back 7 times. And it seems like there was a relative of Martin Luther King was there, and there was some other activist, Frank Nitti, who said he walked 750 miles for 24 days from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Washington, spoke as well. And he said, "Are y'all tired? Because I'm tired. They think this is a negotiation, but I came here to demand change. My grandson isn't going to march for the same things that my granddaddy marched for. This is a revolution. My hope is that my son doesn't have to be out here in another 50 years protesting the same thing." And I know that to some people, those are scary words. They're not really to me, because I think the country does need to go undergo some radical change. But I do also, and I guess as much as we can in the next few minutes getting into it, that there's a lot of different groups with different ideas of what that revolution looks like or what that means. You know, the Trump people think that they're having a revolution by taking back the power from, you know, their idea of the deep state or whatever. And now the left is like, we got to have a revolution, whether that means political revolution or in the streets, to get it back from Trump. Or, you know, there's a lot of that talk around, you know, and in the last week we've had 2 people killed.
I just don't see how they could
in the
think he's
streets.
getting rid of the deep state.
I don't either. I mean, there's no evidence.
Go there as far as the people who
we don't have time to go into that.
The people that don't even know what that means yet and believe that there's a group of people out there who are really taking on the deep state. I don't see how, if that's interesting to you, Trump can be that guy to you.
No, he's definitely not.
I thought it was funny that they turned the deep state into a Democrat thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. They made it like, oh, it's
I've
just.
been knowing about that for like 10 years. You didn't know?
When I was a kid, we called it the shadow government, but it wasn't. Oh, the Democrats are the shadow government, and this guy came from nowhere, and he's going to save the day. But I mean, without even getting to that, the point here is there's a lot of talk of revolution, and people have different ideas what that means. And some of them are apparently willing to shoot each other in the streets. They're willing to build. They're making shields. They're making
duels if they want.
And some people are saying, hey, we're just reacting to the other side. They both feel that way, right? Oh, we're just doing that because they were doing this. Well, we're just doing this because they were doing this. And like you said last week, Micah, it's like, what, 1930s Europe? Or
yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of similarities to, you know, post-World War I, pre-World War II Europe, with ideology being struggled and fought on the streets. We've seen a lot of passivity for decades in America, and it's in some ways nice to see people active. And thank goodness for the peaceful activists that are out there trying to make change towards peace in the world. But people's passions are high, so people are going to die.
I mean, I think, and that's what I think, honestly, everyone hearing this who thinks that they're, whether you think you're a Boogaloo boy or an Antifa, left-wing, revolutionary, whatever, really study some history of what these things look like. You know, these things aren't pretty, like, you know, playing a first-person shooter online or something like that. This is, like we saw last week in Kenosha, this is people getting shot in the head. This is people feeling like they're defending themselves, shooting other people.
With families.
This is people, and like it's not something that we want to go to, but you know, we've covered this as well here, Mike, over the last couple of years, that the media, since Trump came into office and probably even before then, have been hyping up the Civil War. This has been like over and over, we're going to a Civil War. Is a new Civil War already started? Are we in a cold Civil War? Has it begun? You know, and to me, that's a part of this whole thing. You got the Alex Jones of the world saying, oh, the leftists, we need to round them up. You know, they're just feeding into this mentality, and some people are totally bought in. I'm seeing people who at one point profess to give a crap about liberty and freedom saying, well, they're a bunch of communists, so let's round them up. People are calling for Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act against them and to like go send the military into these cities.
I don't think you need to shoot a communist until they try to take your stuff.
I mean, yeah, exactly. And I think people should be able to defend themselves, but to fall into that trap of like, oh, because one side thinks it's the nationalist fascists under Trump that are, you know, about to take over, and the other side is, you know, the communist
Antifa at the same time.
And it seems like just so convenient to have people fall into these ideological camps.
But I don't think they
while the technocracy is moving forward, all these things are moving forward. As we talked about last week, Kamala Harris pledges unconditional loyalty to Israel. Trump's biggest payroller, Sheldon Adelson, who's a huge like Israel. I mean, like
prisons,
real clear. Like simple ways to see that both of these parties and these groups are in some ways, I mean, this is the horseshoe theory come to life. Authoritarians are now meeting.
Yeah.
They've become so opposite that now they're coming back to meet each other. They think they're so different, but they're both authoritarians, and now they're meeting and they're fighting and they're. I mean, it's insane.
Well, like Democrats say this unite.
What flavor of authoritarianism would you like?
Yeah, and I know
that's why it's time to take care of your families and yourself more than ever.
More people are really jumping on that. You want to talk about some of the econ, Micah?
I know.
I'll end with some Australia stuff.
It's crazy because I think this is one of the reasons we need to look towards taking care of ourselves. Look what's going on. Look at the political choices we're given. Try to do something about that. Turns out the Financial Times, as of August 17th, said over 45 companies that are over $1 billion filed Chapter 11. So you get this year. In 2009, the height of the financial crisis, only 39 did. And last year, in normal times or quasi-normal times, only 18. So that's like more than double. Think about it. What's Chapter 11? This is where a bunch of rich billion-dollar companies are going to get richer also because they're going to file bankruptcy, get restructured, get rid of debt, maybe get some stimulus as the helicopter money gets out. You know, and it's also an excuse that a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, be retooled, et cetera, et cetera. So it hits Main Street in a different way, and you're going to see stocks, you know, soar. 57 billion with more than 50 million were filed bankruptcy just this year. And I thought it was interesting. Speaking of Blackstone, they paid $2.5 billion to buy Takeda Consumer Healthcare. So just some things to get into.
Blackstone is, for everybody who might not have heard us talk about this recently, is they're a bank, or they're just some sort of financial institution.
Yeah,
right?
they're a shadow bank, I think is the best word that I've heard.
I thought that was BlackRock.
Yeah, BlackRock, not Blackstone, but Blackstone is the one that paid for this. So.
There's a couple of black
This is good.
Well, it is important to know
check this one real quick. I got it.
If we're talking about the same one, they are a financial institution that has become extremely important during COVID-19 and is now, some people think that they're taking over the Fed or they're becoming a much bigger role, which to me goes back to the whole idea that bankster issues, Goldman Sachs, all this kind of stuff continues under Bush, Obama. We knew it would have continued under Clinton because she was telling them that hey, I'm saying one thing publicly, but don't worry about it. And it's happening under Trump. And it's going to happen under Biden or anybody else. These things are. There's these, I don't know, those are the consistent issues, right, Micah? The financial kind of collapse, the surveillance, the war, the police state, and continued suppression of free speech in different ways. Donald Trump may pay some lip service to those tech companies need to stop doing this. I don't believe in government getting involved in that. But at the end of the day, he's fine if they censor his opponents. It's not like he really truly cares about that because these people don't have principles and they're leading so many people astray.
It's absolute power with no concern for anything else. It sure seems like, right?
Man, I got one last crazy story as we start to wrap up here. We are going to play one more song as we close out. Micah's got Jeremy Carswell, which everybody always enjoys hearing this song.
What level crazy is it? We're going back to our favorite place, Australia, where our brothers and sisters over there are dealing with red, yellow.
Insane. We're level red.
Some sort of does this mean anything anymore?
The terror. Hey, we should have the terror alert level for them for all the crazy things we're doing.
We need to, and have it maybe something other than color, but because we got to be a little different than their model, I think.
Well, this one definitely. However we
I know you are.
however we measure it, it's definitely way up there.
It's not green, y'all.
So this article is coming from thenewdaily.com, which is an Australian website. Leave anti-vaxxers in lockdown. Calls grow to punish COVID vaccine deniers.
Oh my God!
And I want to mention to this before we get into this. This was, and we would really be, not doing our job if we didn't mention this. This weekend, guys, there was huge. I'm talking tens of thousands of people. Some say in the hundreds of thousands of protests for the third or fourth weekend in Berlin. Massive protests, people in the street. They were live streaming everywhere. Also in London with, David Icke was one of the speakers. I know he's controversial to a lot of people, but they're estimating 35 to some say 50,000 people in London out there protesting against masks, against lockdowns. I know some of you hearing this on KPFT, you might have all kinds of opinions about this. We're just sharing the fact that there are people who are upset about it. It was happening in London. It was happening in Berlin. It was happening in Dublin. It was happening in, I believe somebody told me about a protest in Slovakia. So while the U.S. is divided more than ever and shooting each other in the streets, people are in other countries, and European Union mainly, are going out there by the tens and thousands of maybe hundreds of thousands into the streets, calling it out. And so we should see, right, if their theories are correct, 100,000 people in the streets, there should be a gigantic spike in Berlin within the next month, couple of weeks or so. Something noticeable. You got 100,000 people, and none of these people are wearing masks. This is a very much nobody's here wearing masks. There's no space between these people, no social distancing, and all this. So I'm just saying that's happening. And then over here in Australia, as we've been talking about, and New Zealand, they're on lockdown. They've got roving cops breaking people's windows, taking them out of their cars. They're fining people. They're doing all kinds of stuff that is just really insane. Just really insane to see what's going on out there. So this one says Australians who choose not to get a coronavirus vaccine should have their freedoms cut, doctors argue, effectively leaving them in lockdown. After Prime Minister Scott Morrison flip-flopped on whether a COVID-19 vaccine would be mandatory. Remember, he said it should be mandatory as possible, but then he's like, no, I didn't mean that.
As mandatory as possible.
How do you get to close to mandatory? Isn't that
we're sort of there, we're not really there.
Well, let's just not call it that.
So Health Minister Greg Hunt said on Thursday the government would consider applying measures like, quote, no jab, no play if ineffective inoculation is developed. It won't be mandatory, but it will be widely encouraged. We are keeping on the table the existing mechanisms we have, such as no jab, no pay, no jab, no play. And again, this is what we've been talking about. This is the social engineering, lock you out of society if you don't participate.
They always got these slogans, too.
Yeah, it has to be. It's very easy.
It's like cheerleaders.
Easy for you to remember. So then they talk about this.
If it doesn't fit, you must have quit.
Dr. Zach Turner, who owns medical clinics across Australia, he's calling for the government to implement strict limits on, and listen to this doctor. This is a medical doctor operating in Australia. To achieve herd immunity and completely eradicate the transmission of COVID-19, we would need about 80 to 95% of the population vaccinated, which in reality may take up until late next year. And here you go is the best part. The problem is a bunch of clowns with degrees from the University of Believe Everything they read off the internet
Oh my God.
are espousing misinformation and lies that could seriously derail our country's return back to normal. Australia should implement a COVID-19 vaccine passport or card where those who have had the jab can freely travel around, attending sporting events, go to galleries, and on interstate holidays, he said. And those that haven't should essentially stay living in some form of lockdown. Quote, the government should consider updating the current yellow vaccination passport issued to Australians who receive vaccinations before visiting high-risk countries. These could easily be turned into electronic vaccinating cards and offered to each Australian. He said those who refuse to vaccinate should not be allowed to travel, interstate, or on public transport without a mask. And when it comes to private sector, businesses could refuse anti-vaxxers from visiting retail outlets, gyms, movie cinemas, restaurants, bars, and nightclubs. So just some of the insanity. I mean, and if you hear that and you don't think there's anything wrong with that, which today somebody told me on Facebook, this doesn't sound unreasonable.
I think it's interesting. They say gun stores have soared in America like 70%.
Well, we also got to remember that, like,
they're unarmed.
Okay.
Yeah, they are.
So let's just say hypothetically, like everything with COVID is checking out, and this government is telling us the truth, and these passports could be used now.
Why don't we have these
Still, like, whatever, 10, 20, 30 years from now, who's to say that some government wouldn't be crooked and use and abuse those passports
in the future?
You know what I'm saying? Like, down the line, like, who knows what
the powers created by each administration.
Once it's there, it's there.
Future tyrants.
Once it's there, it's there.
And it might not ever go away. I mean, why would they let that go? Just like 9/11. I mean, it's 9/11 all over again.
It's the invisible enemy. So you can say that, it could be abused.
Current legislation always empowers future tyrants, and maybe we should.
It's going to get abused
each time bills are passed.
It's going to get abused, and it's already getting abused. We played that clip a couple weeks ago. The guy in the freaking black SS looking outfit saying, we don't want to be doing this, but we will to keep you safe. We're going around roving checkpoints, breaking people, smashing them out of their houses.
More people are learning about that.
He's like, hey, we had to kill 4 people today
because they wouldn't tell us where they lived.
Yeah,
they just wouldn't tell us. So we had to do what we had to do. Guys, we're out of time now for today. This has been Freethinker Radio. I want to remind you guys again, we are now on Spotify. You can catch our rebroadcast, of course, at kpft.org and at the archive. But also, if you like Spotify, use that. Find us there. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, Float, all those good things. And we're also on the Stitcher app. And, of course, at thehoustonfreethinkers.com. We're going to get out of here with Jeremy Carswell. Anything else, guys?
Lilu thinks we're cute. So thanks.
Lots of good comments. Shout out some comments. What do y'all like the best? I saw all kinds of stuff. Did the protests help with forced lockdowns?
People talking about one comment says there's 1.3 million people estimated in Berlin that stood together. And I do have a friend who is Laura from Germany, who actually sent me a documentary that we released on the YouTube channel that shows the truth about it. Because of course they say it's just a QAnon thing. It's just a bunch of right-wing extremists, millions of right-wing extremist QAnon people out there. But until next time, Freethinker Radio. Check out Jeremy Carswell. We'll see you next week.